The storm hit faster than the forecast had warned. Wind howled across the deserted runway as lightning carved jagged scars across the dark sky. Harper Monroe gripped the doorframe of the hangar, her breaths short, rapid. She wasn't just battling the weather. Inside her, a storm of betrayal, failure, and shame had been brewing for months. Tonight, it had reached landfall. Before we continue with the story, tell us where you're watching from. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. The aviation world knew her as the youngest female pilot to lead private charter missions across North America, but titles mean nothing when trust is broken. Just 48 hours ago, she had discovered the man she intended to marry, Lucas Green, had not only cheated on her, but also conspired to get her demoted, all for a corporate promotion she once helped him prepare for. Now, stripped of her flight, privileges and suspended pending investigation, Harper returned to the only place that still smelled like purpose, the old hangar at the edge of the airfield. Here her late father had taught her to fly. Here she had made her first solo lift, and yet tonight, even this sacred ground offered no shelter from the war inside her. As she reached for the old toolbox, a sound sliced through the wind, faint, metallic, like something being dragged. She turned sharply. Across the hangar floor, near the auxiliary helicopter, a man was crouched, disheveled, barefoot, his beard wild but his eyes alert, a large tarp draped over what looked like a makeshift bedding. "What the hell?" Harper muttered, stepping closer with her flashlight. The beam landed on the man's face. His expression wasn't fearful, just calm, unbothered. "You're trespassing," she said, voice sharp, though curiosity tinged her fear. "Then maybe I'm finally in the right place," the man replied, his voice low and dry, like gravel. "This is where broken things come, right?" He didn't move, didn't flinch, just sat there, eyes fixed on her like he could already see past her defenses. "I could have you arrested," she said, although she didn't reach for her phone. Something about him felt disarming. Not safe, but not dangerous either. More like someone who had stopped running because there was simply nowhere else to go. "You could," he replied, standing slowly. He was tall, lean muscle under layers of dirt and fatigue. "But if you did, you'd miss the part where I save your life in about 2 minutes. Harper stared at him, heart pounding. Was he delusional? "What are you talking about?" she snapped. The man pointed past her shoulder. "Your helicopter, its tail rotor's loose. Wind's picking up. You parked it wrong. If it shifts another 15 degrees in this gust, it'll tip and explode." He said it so matter-of-factly, it felt like a scene rehearsed 100 times in his mind. She turned on instinct, and there it was, the rotor blade vibrating dangerously, the tail swaying like a drunk stumbling toward disaster. Adrenaline surged. Harper bolted toward it, flipping levers, engaging the lock mechanisms she should have double-checked, but didn't. Minutes passed in a blur, until the tail steadied and the storm eased, just slightly. When she turned back, the man was still, there, watching. "Who are you?" she asked, breathless. "Name's Ethan," he said, "and you're welcome." Harper didn't thank him. Instead, she stared. This man had just saved her and possibly others, yet had been sleeping on a top beside an aircraft. "You worked on helicopters?" she asked skeptically. Ethan shrugged. "Something like that. I used to fix things before things broke me." The sentence hung in the air like a riddle wrapped in regret. And Harper, for reasons she couldn't, yet name, didn't press further. Instead, she gestured toward the tiny break room near the back of the hangar. "It's dry in there. If you don't touch anything, you can sleep there tonight." Ethan tilted his head, studying her. "Not used to kindness with conditions," he muttered, but followed her anyway. Inside the break room, Harper tossed him an old blanket. "This doesn't mean we're friends," she said. "You're just not dying in my hangar tonight." Ethan nodded, already curling into a corner like a man used to shrinking out of sight. "Fair enough." As Harper left him and walked back toward the chopper, her mind spun with more questions than answers. Who was he really? Why did he know so much? And why, despite everything screaming caution, did she feel like the real storm had only just begun? And just outside the hangar, as the last rumble of thunder drifted over the hills, Ethan stared at a photograph inside his weathered wallet, its edges frayed, the ink faded, but the woman in it unmistakable. Harper Monroe, the morning sun filtered through dusty glass, casting long bars of light across the hangar floor. Harper stood at the edge of the landing pad, sipping burnt coffee from a chipped mug. She hadn't slept much. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ethan's face, his calm under pressure, his cryptic words, the way he'd known exactly what was wrong with the tail rotor. She told herself it didn't matter. He was just a drifter. A lucky guess, maybe. But the unease wouldn't leave. She kept replaying the moment she saw him holding that tarp, like it was his home. Something in his posture was too deliberate, too composed for someone who'd supposedly lost everything. Inside the break room, Ethan was already awake, folding the blanket neatly and returning it to the shelf without being asked. Harper leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You slept?" she asked flatly. He nodded. "Best sleep I've had in weeks. Your silence is surprisingly peaceful." She didn't laugh. Instead, she asked, "You gonna tell me how you knew about the rotor?" Ethan took his time answering. "Once upon a time I was a flight mechanic, worked on military crafts, charters, even some custom birds for billionaires. Before I learned that people with money don't necessarily have more sense." That answer stirred something in her, and not just curiosity. There was truth in the bitterness. She'd seen it too, how power insulated stupidity, how ambition devoured loyalty. Still, she didn't trust him. "And now you live in a hangar?" she asked. "Seems like a long fall." Ethan met her gaze. "Falling's not the hard part. It's landing in a world that doesn't remember who you were." He wasn't performing. That much was clear. Harper sensed authenticity in his pain, but that didn't make it easier. She'd been burned before by people who sounded just as broken. "Well," she said, finally turning away, "you can't stay here. I won't call the cops, but this isn't a shelter." Ethan nodded, unfazed. "Didn't expect you to offer more." And then, as she started walking back toward the main floor, he added, "But I know who you are, Harper Monroe." She froze. Her spine stiffened, coffee forgotten. "What did you just say?" He didn't blink. "I know who you are. I saw your interviews, your records. Youngest pilot to earn a solo charter license, survived a mid-air fuel line rupture, rebuilt an entire evac route after the flood in Texas." Harper stepped toward him slowly. "That's not public knowledge." "Not the flood detail." Ethan's eyes flicked away, but not before she caught the truth. "Who are you really?" she whispered, "because you're not just some mechanic." "I'm nobody," he said. "Not anymore. But I used to be someone who made big mistakes. Someone who lost everything chasing ghosts." He paused, voice quieter now. "I was in a program, special ops logistics. We weren't supposed to exist. When it all blew up, I disappeared." Harper stared at him like he'd just torn open a wound she didn't know she had. "You're lying." But she didn't believe her own words. Ethan didn't argue. Instead, he pulled something from his coat. A patch, military grade, weathered, faded, real. She took it without a word, her fingers trembling. "Why me?" she asked after a long silence. "Why come here?" Ethan looked away, then finally answered, "Because this is the last place I saw her." Harper's heart dropped. "Her who?" "My sister." Now her world tilted. "I don't have a brother," she said, almost laughing. "No, you don't," Ethan replied, "but she was your flight instructor once. Naomi Monroe." Harper felt her breath catch. Her aunt, her father's sister, the one who taught her barrel turns, dead reckoning, stall recoveries, the one who died in an unsolved crash 10 years ago. You knew Naomi, Harper whispered. Ethan's jaw clenched. She saved my life, twice. And I wasn't there when she needed someone. I've been trying to make peace with that for a long time. Harper took a step back. Her legs felt unsteady. Nothing about this man made sense, and yet everything connected. So you came here because of guilt, she asked, voice hardening. You think crashing into my life is going to absolve you of whatever happened back then? Ethan didn't flinch. No, I came here because the truth never landed. It vanished with Naomi's plane, and I think someone made sure it did. There it was, the real reason. The storm had only begun, and now Harper had no idea what was more dangerous, the secrets Ethan carried, or how much she already wanted to know the answers. Harper had never driven so fast on an empty stomach. The silence in the car crackled louder than the engine as she stared at the road, her grip tight on the wheel. Ethan sat beside her, hands resting calmly in his lap, like he hadn't just detonated a decade-long mystery with a single name, Naomi Monroe. Her aunt, her idol, her unsolved death. You can't just drop that on someone and expect silence, Harper finally said, her voice brittle. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He waited until the road straightened out, until her knuckles loosened. Their death grip. I didn't expect silence, I expected disbelief. You've been very accommodating, actually. She shot him a glare. Don't mistake restraint for acceptance. He nodded, as if her anger was justified. I wouldn't. But if I waited for the right moment to tell this story, I'd die with it. Harper turned away, eyes flicking to the horizon. What happened to Naomi? She asked softly. Don't give me half-truths. Ethan took a breath. She was investigating a flight route used for illegal arms shipments. Black market stuff. Government was turning a blind eye. Naomi wasn't supposed to know. But she stumbled on a manifest, and someone needed her to disappear. Harper felt her chest tighten. The crash was no accident, Ethan said. She radioed for help. I heard it, but I was ordered to stand down. They said it was an error, a mechanical fault, but I knew better. He paused. I've been chasing pieces ever since. Harper swallowed hard, her throat dry. Why didn't you go public? I tried, he said, but it's not a story anyone wanted told. And when I pressed harder, I lost everything. My rank, my ID, they buried me like they buried her. Harper parked the car outside a rusted storage facility at the edge of town. Why here? She asked. Ethan pointed. Because this is where she sent the final transmission. It was bounced through a private frequency, and because this, he held up a worn keycard, was in the last box she mailed me. They walked in silence down the dim corridor of units, the air heavy with dust and neglect. Ethan stopped in front of Unit 47. Naomi's call sign was November 47. He slid the keycard into the lock. A click. The door groaned open. Inside was darkness, pierced only by a strip of light from the ceiling vent. A tarp-covered table sat in the center, and on it, Harper saw what looked like a cockpit radio, parts of a fuselage and a black box. Her breath caught. That's from her plane. Ethan nodded. I recovered it months after the crash. They told the world it was lost at sea, but I tracked the wreckage to a remote depot in the desert. Someone hid it deliberately. Harper stepped closer, reverent. The flight recorder was scratched, dented, but intact. Have you listened to it? I couldn't, Ethan said. The encryption's military grade, but you have access. Harper turned to him, startled. I'm not cleared anymore, but you have friends, contacts, people who still owe Naomi something. Harper hesitated, heart thudding. If this proves what you say, then we don't just clear her name, Ethan said. We find the people who killed her and stop them from doing it again. The weight of it all hit Harper like gravity, reasserting itself. She ran her hand along the box's edge. She was more than my aunt. she whispered. She was the reason I ever left the ground. Ethan reached into his coat and pulled out a small photograph. It showed Naomi in her flight suit, grinning, arms slung around a much younger, cleaner version of Ethan. She called me Wings, he said, because I was always trying to escape. She said one day I'd fly for the right reasons. Harper stared at the photo. Did you love her? She asked quietly. Ethan's face changed, softer, more haunted. I admired her, respected her, feared her even. But no, I didn't love her the way you think. Naomi didn't leave space for romance. She left legacies. His voice faltered. And I failed. Her? Harper turned to the door. No, she said. You didn't fail. You survived. That's how stories like hers get heard, by survivors who won't shut up. She lifted the black box. It was heavier than she expected. Let's go. As they exited the storage unit, neither noticed the tiny red sensor blinking behind an old vent panel, a remote trigger, a warning system. Someone had just been alerted. The past wasn't just knocking, it was already watching. The data analyst Harper trusted wasn't a stranger. His name was Miles Kendricks, retired, reclusive, and notoriously paranoid. He used to work for aerospace defense, but now lived off-grid, 40 minutes out in the hills, in a cabin that doubled as a fortress. Harper hadn't seen him since her rookie years, but he had once told her, "If you ever bring me something dangerous, enough to get us both killed, make sure it's interesting." She didn't even have to call. When she pulled up the gravel road and stepped out with the black box, Miles was already waiting at the door in wool socks and a frayed hoodie. 12 years, Monroe, he said. And the first thing you bring me is a federal crime. Harper shrugged. Figured I'd skip the small talk. Inside the cabin, dusty monitors glowed with blue light, humming with quiet menace. Miles cleared space on the workbench and gestured for the box. You realize this kind of tech doesn't just get lost. Someone made it disappear. That's why I brought it to you, Harper replied. Ethan stood by the window, silent, his eyes sweeping the trees. Miles began working, plugging the black box into a converter, muttering to himself, "Encryption's old, but nasty. This'll take a few hours unless they rigged it to self-wipe." Harper's stomach twisted. "Can that happen?" Miles shot her a look. "Of course it can. This was Naomi Monroe's plane, wasn't it?" Harper froze. "How did you... You think I didn't notice when she vanished off every database known to man? I tracked her. I tried to find what happened, but everything just stopped. No satellite echoes, no air traffic logs. It was like someone dropped her out of the sky and erased the sky behind her." Ethan finally spoke. "She didn't go quietly." Miles looked at him. "You're the shadow, the ghost in her file, the redacted one." Ethan didn't answer. That was enough. Miles turned back to his terminal. "If this is what I think it is, we're gonna need to move fast. Someone's gonna notice this signal waking up." While Miles worked, Harper stepped outside. The air smelled like cedar and tension. Ethan followed but kept his distance. "Why didn't you try to find me before?" she asked. "If Naomi mattered so much." "I did," he said, "but you weren't ready. You were climbing. You needed the illusion of safety." She turned to him, biting back tears. "And now that I've lost everything, I'm just the right amount of broken?" Ethan shook his head. "No. Now you're free. People only go looking for truth when they've got nothing left to protect." She looked away, anger simmering beneath her skin, not because he was wrong, but because he might be right. Back inside, Miles cursed under his breath. "Okay, I've got something. Audio fragment. It's corrupted, but listen." He hit play. The room filled with static. Then Naomi's voice cut through, ragged, urgent. "They knew, not mechanical. Repeat, this isn't mechanical. They're jamming comms. Tell Ethan, tell him the route is..." The file glitched. Then silence. Harper stood frozen. "She said your name." Ethan nodded slowly, jaw tight. "She was trying to warn me." Miles leaned back, pale. "That signal's not military. It's contractor-coded. Private security. Firm," he typed furiously. "And you're not gonna like this, because the source was triangulated from less than 30 miles from here, recently." "What?" Harper said. Miles pointed at the monitor. "You were followed, and whoever sent that jamming signal a decade ago, they're still active. They're still watching." Ethan walked to the table and unplugged the device. "We need to leave now." "But there's more data," Harper said. "There's more voice files, flight coordinates." "Which they'll erase if they get here first," Ethan interrupted. "Trust me, Monroe. The second that file played, it sent a beacon. And they don't play fair." Miles grabbed a drive and dumped what he could. "Here, take it. It's not everything, but it's proof." Harper took the drive. Her hands were shaking. "What about you?" she asked. Miles smiled grimly. "Don't worry. My house disappears in 20 minutes. You'll figure out how." As they raced back to the truck, Harper asked, "Where do we go now?" Ethan didn't answer right away. Then he looked over at her, eyes filled with something old and dark. Now we hunt ghosts." Behind them, in the trees, a drone camera blinked once, then vanished into the branches. Ethan hadn't spoken a word since they left the cabin. His hands were tight on the wheel, knuckles white, every muscle locked in silent calculation. Harper sat in the passenger seat, clutching the USB drive like it was made of glass and gunpowder. The highway unrolled in a blur, flanked by forest and shadows, and the air inside the truck was thick with questions unasked. "Where are we going?" Harper finally asked. Her voice was low but edged with tension. Ethan exhaled through his nose. "To a place where the truth gets expensive," she frowned. "Can you be more vague, or is that your specialty?" He glanced at her, the corner of his mouth twitching. "It's safer when you don't know everything." "That's not an answer." "No," Ethan replied. "It's a boundary." She folded her arms, staring out the window. "You really think these people are still active? After all these years?" He nodded. "People like that don't vanish. They just change uniforms, shift logos, swap investors. The mission stays the same." The road eventually gave way to gravel, then dirt. A rusted gate appeared at the end of the trail, overgrown and forgotten. Ethan stepped out, typed a code into a keypad hidden beneath a loose plank, and the gate groaned open. "What is this place?" Harper asked, stepping into a clearing filled with half-buried containers and satellite dishes aimed at nothing. "A dead channel," Ethan said. "An old field station we used for remote tracking, officially decommissioned." Harper wandered through the lot. "And unofficially." "Still listens," Ethan replied. "Still remembers things others would rather forget." Inside one of the containers, the temperature dropped. The air smelled like dust and old copper. Ethan powered up a terminal while Harper explored the shelves, boxes labeled with strange names, old photos pinned to corkboards, maps with routes drawn in red ink. She stopped when she saw Naomi's name. "She was tracking them before the crash," Harper whispered, pulling one of the files closer. "Flight routes, rendezvous coordinates, even personnel rosters. She was close." Ethan nodded. "Too close. They didn't just kill her. They erased her." He paused, pointing to a familiar signature on one of the pages. "And that's the man who gave the kill order." Harper blinked. "John Greaves. He's on TV all the time. Runs security for like half the West Coast. Used to run covert ops for a private defense firm. Now he wears suits instead. Of camouflage. But make no mistake, he's the same man." Ethan's voice was low, dangerous. The computer chirped. Ethan moved to it quickly, inserting the USB. If we can decrypt the rest of Naomi's final message, we can trace the origin. Point of her last flight plan? It might still be in the backup servers, if they weren't wiped. Harper watched the screen flash green. And if they were? Then we go to Greaves, Ethan said, and we ask him why a pilot died under his watch with a black box full of lies. Harper laughed bitterly. You think he's just going to talk? You think people like him confess because we ask nicely? Ethan looked at her. No, but people like him slip up when they think no one remembers. They worked for hours, piecing together flight data, translating encrypted logs, running Naomi's voice through spectral filters. The pieces started connecting. Freight, drop-offs, a fuel manifest from a non-existent outpost, and a rogue signal registered only once. The night Naomi died. As dawn crept through the cracks of the metal walls, Harper leaned back exhausted. We're chasing ghosts through fog. Ethan didn't look up. No, we're building a map. He pointed to the screen. And every scar on it is a truth they tried to bury. She turned to him, softer now. How did you survive all this? The hiding, the fear, the guilt. He was quiet for a long time. Then, I didn't. Not really. I just kept walking until the noise stopped. And then you found me. Harper blinked. I didn't find you. You did, he said. When you handed me that first blanket, you didn't know it, but it was the first thing anyone had given me in years without expecting something back. She didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. Outside, the wind shifted. The trees moved in a different rhythm. And far off, just beyond the clearing, a camera lens focused silently on their window, transmitting every word. The city felt like a different planet after days in the woods. Glass towers shimmered in morning sun. Commuters buzzed past in practiced urgency, and the streets hummed with the indifference Harper had grown up resenting. Ethan drove like a ghost, blending into the blur, his gaze always flicking to the rearview mirror. Stop doing that, she said. Doing what? Checking the mirror every 8 seconds. Ethan smirked. Force of habit. In my line of work, people watching your back usually meant someone was aiming for it. Harper rolled her eyes. Comforting thought. They were headed downtown to meet someone Ethan swore could get them close to John Greaves, a lobbyist named Silas Holt, who had served under Greaves in the early days, then defected when the company went corporate. Ethan described him as greasy but useful, which wasn't much to go on. They met him at a rooftop bar, the kind where powerful men sipped $30 cocktails while pretending to be ordinary. Silas wore an open collar and mirrored sunglasses, even in shade. You look like someone who just walked out of witness protection, Harper muttered under her breath as they approached. You brought her? Silas asked, eyeing Harper. Ethan didn't blink. She's the reason we're here. Silas sighed, took a long sip of whatever was in his glass and leaned in. I only have 10 minutes before my phone gets cloned, so say what you came to say. Ethan placed a photo on the table. Naomi Monroe, grinning, windblown, alive. I want access to Greaves. You used to be his handler. You can get us in. Silas looked at the photo, something flickering in his face. I remember her, he said. Best damn pilot I ever saw. Didn't know when to shut up, though. She was murdered, Harper said flatly, and the people who did it still walk red carpets. Silas nodded slowly. Greaves doesn't give interviews, doesn't do spontaneous meetings. But he's hosting a closed fundraiser tomorrow, something about veterans, image rehab stuff, private location, vetted guests only. You're on the list, Ethan asked. Of course, Silas said, almost offended, and I can get you both in, but not without a favor. Harper rolled her eyes. Of course there's a favor. I want immunity, Silas said. If this explodes, and it will, I want protection. You'll need someone to testify anyway. Ethan looked at Harper. She hesitated, then nodded. Fine. You get us in, you get immunity. But if you betray us... Relax, princess, Silas said. "I'm not loyal to monsters. I just charge them a monthly fee." He handed Ethan a slim envelope. "This is everything you need. You'll be guests of Ether Technologies. Congratulations, you're now arms lobbyists." Back at their safe house, Harper changed into a sharp black suit that made her feel more like a weapon than a woman. Ethan wore tailored grey, clean-shaven, for the first time since they met. He looked like the kind of man who could walk into a room full of devils and leave with their secrets. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her hair. "You clean up disgustingly well." Ethan smiled. "You don't look bad yourself. Think Greaves will recognize me?" "Let's hope not. But if he does, we improvise." She loaded the drive into a hidden pocket beneath her blouse. Time to hunt the monster. The fundraiser was held in a marble villa overlooking the bay, all glass walls and impossible architecture. Security was tighter than a military base. Silas met them at the gate, smiling like a game show host. "Try to look like you belong," he said, "and don't drink the cocktails. They're terrible." Inside, the crowd was an oil painting of power, ex-generals, energy execs, PR vultures, and media barons. Harper kept close to Ethan, scanning every corner. Then she saw him. John Greaves, taller than she expected, smiling with the cold polish of someone who had never faced consequences. Laughing with someone she couldn't see. Ethan touched her arm. "Ready?" She took a breath. "As I'll ever be." They moved toward the man who had buried Naomi, who had stolen truth and sold it back as fiction, who, in a matter of minutes, would be facing ghosts he thought were long dead. But Greaves looked up, locked eyes with Ethan, and froze. For the first time that night, someone in that room remembered everything. John Greaves didn't move at first. His eyes locked onto Ethan's, and for a flicker of a second, the mask cracked. Just enough for Harper to glimpse the man beneath. Not the public figure with polished charisma, but the soldier-turned-shadow king, who once signed off on deaths like they were expenses. Then, just as quickly, the mask returned. "Well," Greaves said with a practiced chuckle, "look who crawled." Out of the hole, he extended his hand, perfectly poised, eyes daring Ethan to break the illusion. "Didn't expect to see you again, Captain Frost." Harper's breath caught. Ethan had told her his name was Ethan Vale. Ethan took the hand, but didn't smile. "Times change. But men like you don't," Greaves replied, tightening his grip. "You were always good at crawling through mud. I see you've found a +1. Harper stepped forward. "I'm with Ether, Veterans Affairs. You're hosting a lovely event, Mr. Greaves." Greaves gave her a look that skimmed condescending before turning polite. "Charming. You must be the PR muscle." "Something like that," she said coolly. Ethan leaned in slightly. "We're hoping to discuss a mutual acquaintance, Naomi Monroe." That did it. Greaves blinked, then smiled. "I'd love to talk," he said, voice suddenly warm. "Why don't we step into my office? It's quieter there." He gestured toward the back. Ethan didn't move. "We're not alone for this one, Greaves. I brought backup." "Of course," Greaves said, eyes twinkling. "After all, ghosts rarely walk alone." The private office was glass and steel and silence, soundproof. Harper noticed the lack of security cameras. That meant Greaves planned for this kind of conversation. "You always were theatrical," Ethan said, sitting across from him. Setting. "The scene for when the dead come knocking." Greaves leaned back. "You're not dead, but you should be. I gave you a 2-hour head start back then. I assumed you'd vanish properly, off the grid, off the map, but here you are, playing detective." He looked at Harper. "And you must be the niece. Naomi spoke of you." "What did she say?" Harper asked, fists clenched. "That you had your father's hands and your mother's stubbornness. She was proud, too proud." He sighed, like a man recalling a fond mistake. "She should have stayed out of it. The route was clean. The shipments were legal, mostly." "She died trying to expose you," Harper snapped. Greaves tilted his head. She died because she underestimated how replaceable pilots are. She thought integrity mattered more than orders. That's always a fatal miscalculation. Ethan leaned forward. And the black box, the one you said was unrecoverable? Red tape, Greaves said with a shrug. Sometimes erasing a story is easier than rewriting it. Harper slid the USB across the table. This story just got rewritten. Greaves picked it up, amused. You think this will undo anything? You think proof matters? Proof changes everything, Harper said. Once the right people see it, the right people, Greaves repeated, almost laughing. There are no right people. There are only people in power. And I know them all. I pay most of them. Do you think this ends with a headline? A trial? He leaned in, smile fading. This ends with silence. Again. Ethan stood. You're right. It doesn't end with a trial. It ends with exposure. The kind you can't scrub. Greaves smiled faintly. Then I suppose I'll have to be more persuasive. He pressed a button beneath the desk. The door locked, and in the corner, a panel slid open, revealing a man with a gun. Harper didn't hesitate. She kicked the table, slamming it into Greaves's chest. Ethan lunged for the man, the two of them crashing into the wall. The USB flew across the room. Harper dove for it, rolled and hit the emergency lock override. Alarms began to wail. Ethan slammed the guard's head into the floor. Greaves, gasping, reached for a drawer, but Harper was faster. She leveled his own weapon at him, finger steady. You blink. You breathe wrong. I swear to God. Greaves held up his hands, face dark with fury. You won't get far. Ethan pulled Harper to the door. We already did. They bolted through the hallway as security rushed in. The crowd panicked. Silas caught their eye across the room, mouth open in shock, then moving, then vanishing. Back in the truck, breathless, Ethan turned to Harper. You good? She nodded. Did we get it? She held up the drive. Every word. Behind them, the villa went into lockdown, and inside the glass office, Greaves stared at a blank screen, whispering, She really did train you well. They didn't drive home. They didn't even drive to a safe house. Ethan took the truck off-road an hour outside the city, straight into a thicket of pine trees that swallowed cell signals and sunlight alike. They'll trace the plates, Harper warned. They won't get far, Ethan replied, guiding them to a makeshift hideout buried beneath an old ranger outpost. Inside, it smelled like cold metal and old fear. Harper paced as Ethan booted up a secured terminal. The USB sat between them like a ticking bomb. You think we bought enough time? She asked. We didn't buy time, Ethan muttered. We bought attention. They know we're not bluffing now. Harper rubbed her temples. You saw his face. Greaves didn't expect us to survive that meeting. He wanted it quiet. 2 more missing people in a world that doesn't blink. Ethan nodded. But we didn't die. That changes the equation. He uploaded the files to a private cloud, locking them behind triple encryption. Then he handed Harper a copy. We go nuclear if we're cornered. She took it, but her hands were shaking. And if we are cornered? Ethan met her eyes. We don't run. Not anymore. That night, neither of them slept. Every crack in the woods sounded like boots. Every shadow looked like a rifle scope. When dawn crept in, pale and cold, Harper found Ethan outside, sharpening a knife in silence. You always expect the worst? She asked. Only when I know the worst is watching, he replied. She sat beside him. Tell me something honest. He looked at her. I didn't think I'd survive this long. Not after Naomi. Not after the desert. I kept waiting for someone to erase me, quietly, efficiently. Harper reached out, hand brushing his. You're not invisible anymore. That's a good thing. They made contact with Miles the next afternoon through a hidden relay. His voice came in cracked through static. You're burned. The footage, Of Greaves has already leaked in fragments. Someone in his circle panicked. We've got 5 hours max before they trace the leak back to you. What's the play? Ethan asked. Miles was silent for a moment. Then, you need to go public. Full exposure, all of it, before they silence the story. That's suicide, Harper said. That's survival, Miles countered. You either control the narrative or they erase it again. Harper turned to Ethan. Can we do it? Will anyone believe it? He looked at her. They'll believe you. Why me? Because you're not a ghost. You're not a soldier. You're someone who lost family and chose to fight anyway. That matters. They contacted a reporter from an independent outlet, someone Naomi had trusted years ago, an old friend named Raina Price. If you're lying, she warned on the encrypted call, I'll burn you both down. If we're lying, Harper said, then why does everyone keep trying to kill us? They agreed to meet at an abandoned airport terminal. Raina arrived in a hoodie, camera bag slung over, her shoulder, eyes scanning like a hawk. Harper handed her the drive. This is Naomi's black box, her voice, her last flight plan, the chain of command that signed her death. Raina listened to part of it. Her face went pale. This changes everything. It doesn't. Don't change Naomi's death, Harper said, but it can make sure the men who killed her don't get to name the next target. Raina looked at Ethan. You sure you want to do this? They'll come for you. Ethan shook his head. Let them. This time I'm not hiding. Raina set up a live stream, uncut, raw, irreversible. Harper stood in front of the camera. No script, no makeup, just truth. She told the world who Naomi was, what had been taken, what Greaves had done, and who helped her uncover it. When she finished, her hands were shaking. Raina ended the stream and said, They're going to hit back, hard. Harper smiled weakly, then let them come. Ethan walked to her side, because now we've got something they never planned on. What's that? She asked. He looked at her, his voice quiet but certain. The whole world watching. The video went viral in under 4 hours. It wasn't supposed to. Raina's site was small, her following loyal but niche. But something about Harper's raw honesty, the jagged tension in her voice, the grief behind her eyes, it struck a nerve. Within hours, major outlets were quoting it. Hashtags exploded, and somewhere between trending headlines and whispered DC phone calls, John Greaves lost control of his own narrative. Ethan watched it unfold with the stillness of a man who'd already lived through the aftermath. Harper, on the other hand, paced the safe house like a caged animal. Is this it? She asked. Do we wait now for bullets or subpoenas? Ethan shook his head. We wait for backlash. Then we move. The first death threat came within 12 hours. Not subtle, not veiled. A package on the doorstep of Raina's office, addressed to Harper. Inside, a torn flight jacket. Naomi's. Blood-stained. Staged. Harper froze. Ethan held her back as she stared at it. They want me to run, she whispered. They want you scared, Ethan said. Don't give them what they want. Meanwhile, Greaves released a statement, polished, cold. He denied everything, called the footage deeply edited, the voice recording unverified. Claimed Harper was emotionally unstable, misled by a disgraced veteran with a vendetta. The damage control was textbook, but the public wasn't buying it this time. Veteran groups reposted Harper's words. Former employees started speaking. Up. Anonymous tips poured into Raina's inbox. Shipment manifests, drone footage, even budget allocations that made no sense. Naomi's story wasn't just true. It was a domino, and one had already fallen. Still, Greaves wasn't done. A private security convoy cornered Raina at a gas station the next morning. Ethan and Harper arrived minutes later to find her roughed up but breathing, her camera destroyed. They're not going to sue us, she said, voice shaking. They're going to silence us. Ethan drove them out to a new location, an old lighthouse Ethan once used during an off-grid op. "They'll never look here," he said. Rayna sat in silence. Harper knelt beside her. "You didn't have to come this far," she said. Rayna smiled weakly. "Neither did you, but here we are." Harper sat alone that night at the edge of the cliff. The sea below churned like the storm inside her. Ethan joined her eventually. "You okay?" She nodded. "I thought telling the truth would feel like winning, but all it feels like is waiting for the next attack." He looked out at the dark water. "Because this isn't the end. This is the middle, the hard part, where everything's exposed, but nothing's resolved." She turned to him. "How did you survive all those years hiding?" Ethan was quiet. Then, "I didn't. I just paused." She rested her head on his shoulder. "I'm tired of pausing." "Then let's finish this," he said. "Let's end it in daylight." The next morning, Harper went back online, another video. This time, she didn't speak about Naomi. She spoke about the present. She named companies, cited documents, dared them to refute it, not with lawyers, but with facts. She spoke not to survivors, but to enablers. It was electric, and someone was listening. A senator announced an inquiry. Small, symbolic, but it was a crack. Harper didn't smile. She knew politics well enough to expect deflection, but Ethan did smile, because cracks eventually split everything open. They were preparing to leave the lighthouse when Rayna rushed in with her laptop. "You need to see this," she said. On screen, footage of a hangar, the one where Harper and Ethan first met. Security footage they never knew existed. Greaves' men going through the place days after they left. "Why would they go back there?" Harper asked. Rayna zoomed in on a photo on the wall. "Because they weren't looking for you. They were looking for what Naomi left behind." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "What she never sent, the last piece." Harper stared at the screen, her voice distant. "Then it's still out there. And somewhere, hidden in rust, memory, and steel." Naomi's final truth was waiting. They reached the hangar just after midnight. It hadn't changed. The same dust-covered floor, the same storm-bent rafters. Harper moved like a shadow through the silence, flashlight in hand, her pulse hammering beneath her ribs. She remembered standing here that first night, when Ethan was just a stranger, and her world had only begun to crack. Now they were walking through a graveyard of clues. Rayna stayed by the truck, armed with a satellite uplink and a pocket pistol. 15 minutes, she said. Any longer, and I assume you're dead. Comforting, Ethan muttered as he followed Harper. Into the dark, they started with Naomi's locker. Ethan had broken into it before, years ago, when he was still chasing ghosts. But Naomi had been smart. She'd left nothing there except a single dog tag, etched with a false ID number. Harper stared at it now. She wanted someone to dig. Ethan moved to the maintenance bay, the same place he had once slept, thinking the world had forgotten him. Something about the layout nagged at him, a shift in weight beneath the floorboards. "Give me your light," he said. Harper handed it over. He scanned the seam in the metal paneling, tapping lightly until he heard a hollow note, a square plate bolted from the inside. He slid a blade into the crease and popped the latch. The floor gave way to a hidden compartment, shallow but large, enough to hide a slim black case. Harper reached down and pulled it out. It was heavy. She opened it slowly. Inside, 3 things: a sealed envelope addressed to HM, a small encrypted hard drive, and a pilot's logbook, Naomi's. Harper sat on the floor, hands trembling, and opened the letter. Ethan watched her as she read, and even from where he stood, he could see the tears start to build. She read it out loud. "If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it, And I'm sorry, I really am, but I need you to understand, this wasn't just about right and wrong. It was about silence, about how dangerous it is to let the loudest men speak for everyone else. The people I found, the roads, the tech, the drones, they're all traceable to one company. You know which. You know who runs it. Harper's voice cracked. This can't be real. But Ethan opened the logbook and confirmed it. Inside were flight times, unauthorized reroutes, aerial photographs of secret facilities. Naomi had seen everything, and she had documented it all. They killed her for this, Harper whispered. They buried a war no one even knew was happening. Ethan powered up the hard drive on a portable monitor. It contained a map, one that overlaid civilian routes with military-grade air corridors. And at the center of the overlap, Greaves' name, connected to every facility, every shipment, every death. They had it, the last piece. Rayna's voice buzzed through the comms. We've got company, 2 SUVs, no plates, coming in hot. Ethan grabbed the drive. Harper stuffed the letter into her jacket. They sprinted toward the back exit. We can't lead them to Rayna, she shouted. We won't, Ethan replied. We split. No way! You have the story, Ethan said, grabbing her arm. You take it. You run. I'll draw. In them. She stared at him. If they catch you, they won't. But if they do, it was worth it. He kissed her. Not soft, not slow, urgent and fierce, like it might be the last. Then he shoved the drive into her hands and ran out. The opposite door. Harper froze for half a second. Then she turned and disappeared into the dark. Behind her, she heard the crash of boots, the sound of shouts, and Ethan's voice, loud, taunting, unafraid, as he led them away from the truth they were too late to stop. Harper didn't breathe until she hit asphalt 20 minutes later. She ran blind through the woods, following nothing but instinct and adrenaline. Every branch a claw, and every shadow a trigger. Her lungs burned, her legs ached, but she didn't stop, not until the hangar was far behind, and the flash of headlights told her Rayna was still waiting, just as she'd promised. She slammed the door shut as she dove into the truck. Drive, she rasped. Rayna didn't ask questions. Tires screeched, dust exploded behind them. Where's Ethan? She asked. Harper shook her head. He stayed behind. He's buying us time. Rayna swore under her breath. And what do we have that's worth his life? Harper pulled the drive from her coat and held it out. Everything. Rayna glanced at it. Backups? Encrypted to the cloud. But this... Harper stared at it. This is the proof. Undeniable. It has to go public. Now. They drove in silence until they reached a motel 2 towns over, old, forgotten, surrounded by wheat fields and wind. Rayna set up her mobile command in a single room, unpacking laptops, cameras, a satellite link. This might take hours, she said, maybe longer. Harper nodded, exhausted, eyes fixed on the door as if Ethan might walk through it at any second. But he didn't. Ethan had doubled back through the hangar's maintenance corridor, leading. The gunman through a maze of shadow and steel. He moved like memory, always a step ahead, always calculating. But he wasn't trying to win, just survive long enough for Harper to get away. He made it to the storage yard, scaling the wall, disappearing into a thicket of wire and junked aircraft. He knew the layout better than they did. He knew how to vanish. And when the chase grew cold and the shouts faded, he collapsed into the crawl space of a downed fuselage, gasping for air. He waited until morning. When he emerged, it was like surfacing from a grave. He walked for miles, no phone, no comms, until he reached a gas station on the edge of a county line. He borrowed a phone, called a number only one person knew. "It's me," he said when Rayna picked up. "Is she safe?" Rayna exhaled, relief flooding her voice. "She's alive. She got out. So did the data." Ethan closed his eyes. "Tell her I'm on my way." Rayna hesitated. "You sure? It's not over. Greaves will spin this hard. Let him spin, Ethan said. We've got the wheel now. Back at the motel, Harper watched the sun rise through dusty blinds. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hands raw. The adrenaline was gone. All that remained was dread and the echo of that kiss. He's alive, Raina said softly. He's coming. Harper didn't cry. She just nodded. She already knew. It was late afternoon when Raina finally uploaded the file. Every major outlet had it within minutes. The pilot logs, the air routes, the black box recordings, Naomi's voice, Ethan's map, the receipts, the names. It was fire, and it spread fast. By nightfall, Greaves was trending for the wrong reasons. By dawn, whistleblowers were stepping forward. By midday, there was a federal inquiry. And somewhere, on a dusty road flanked by trees and silence, Ethan Vale walked toward the motel. Slowly, steadily, unafraid. Because for the first time in over a decade, the truth was louder than the lie. Harper opened the door before Ethan even knocked. She didn't say anything, just stared at him, dusty, blood on his collar, a limp in his step, but alive. He looked at her like she was the only unmoving thing in a world constantly shifting. "You made it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I told you I would." He stepped inside. The door closed behind him, like punctuation, at the end of a sentence they had both been writing for too long. For a moment, they just stood there, her arms crossed, his breathing heavy, the motel humming around them like a second heart. "I thought I lost you," she said. "I thought I lost myself," Ethan replied. "But the second you ran with that drive, I knew I hadn't." She looked away, emotion flickering in her throat. "They were going to kill you. Again." "They tried," he said softly. "Again." She took a slow step forward. "And you didn't run?" "Not this time." "Why?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "Because you were running towards something real, and I couldn't live with myself if I stayed behind in a lie." They were inches apart now, breathing the same air, sharing the same gravity. "What happens now?" she asked. "We wait," Ethan said, "for the world to catch up, for the truth to find its shape, for the story to settle." "Do we survive it?" she asked. "We already did," he said, "but that doesn't mean we don't get scarred." She looked up at him. "I'm okay with scars, as long as we earn them." His hand found hers, rough fingers curling around knuckles gone cold. "Then we build from here, one breath at a time." Raina entered without knocking, her eyes scanning the tension like it was part of the mission. "You two done confessing feelings, or should I give you another hour?" Harper smirked. "That depends. Is Greaves panicking yet?" Raina tossed a tablet onto the bed. The headline blazed: "Defense mogul linked to Black Ops scandal faces congressional subpoena." "I'd say he's sweating," Raina said. "Not arrested, but cornered. The court of public opinion has a long memory when it wants to." Ethan looked at Harper. "You did that." "We did that," she corrected. "Naomi did that." Raina sat on the edge of the bed, exhausted but triumphant. The truth doesn't fix everything, but it shifts the power. Outside, the motel parking lot remained still, but inside, something had shifted permanently. The tension was no longer fear, it was weight. The weight of survival, of exposure, of choosing to live beyond the story. That night, Harper stood outside alone, staring up at the stars. Ethan joined her, hands in his pockets, eyes to the sky. "You ever miss flying?" he asked. "Every day," she replied, "but not for the skies, for the silence. Up there, everything makes sense." He turned to her. "Maybe one day we'll go back." "Together?" she asked. "Only together," he said. She leaned into him, her head resting just below his shoulder. "You think Naomi would be proud?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. Then, I think Naomi knew this day would come. She didn't leave us the truth because she hoped it would hurt. She left it because she knew we could carry it. The wind shifted. A quiet moment stretched out, weightless, sacred. And then Harper whispered, "Then let's carry it, as far as it'll go." A week passed, but the world hadn't stopped spinning. Greaves hadn't been arrested, yet. But subpoenas were stacking, former allies were defecting, and closed door. Meetings turned into viral press leaks. His empire was crumbling from within. What Harper and Ethan had exposed wasn't just one man. It was a system, a network, and it was hemorrhaging in daylight. Rayner's newsroom had gone from fringe to front line overnight. Media calls, death threats, security around the clock. "They want this to disappear," she said to Harper, "but the difference is this time we're too loud to silence." Harper nodded, but something in her had gone quiet, restless. She wasn't used to surviving. She was used to moving, solving, fixing. And now they were in the aftermath. "We should be celebrating," Ethan said, watching her from across the motel kitchenette. "But you look like you're still waiting for something." "I am," she replied. "There's one more thing I need to do." She took Naomi's pilot log, the original, not the scans, and drove alone to her childhood home. The house had sat silent since her father passed. Now dust-coated memories, and every room echoed like it had been waiting for her. She lit a candle in the living room and opened the log. Slowly, page by page, she read Naomi's handwriting. Flight altitudes, weather notes, offhand jokes about turbulence and coffee. And then the last page. It simply read, "If I don't come back, don't just survive. Testify. Live out loud." Break the silence. Harper closed the book. "I did," she whispered. "We did." She left the log on her father's desk and stepped outside, the wind teasing the edges of her jacket. Ethan was leaning against the truck, waiting. He knew better than to ask why she had come. He just opened the passenger door and let her back in. They drove in silence for miles. Eventually Harper spoke. "Do you ever think about disappearing again?" "Only when I think about what I'd be leaving behind," Ethan said. "You," she turned to him, "you still see yourself as the ghost in someone else's story." "I was," he admitted, "for a long time. But now I think I want to be something else. Someone else." "Who?" "A man who chooses to stay." They reached the edge of a small airfield, abandoned, windswept, but intact. A single-engine Cessna waited in the hangar. Harper stared at it. "I haven't flown since everything." Ethan handed her a headset. "Then maybe we should take off, not to escape, but to remember." She hesitated, then nodded. They lifted into the sky at dusk. The sun burned gold across the wing. The world fell away beneath them. No noise, no threats, just air and sky and heartbeats. Harper's hands found the controls like they'd never left them, and Ethan, sitting beside her, closed his eyes and let the weight slide off his shoulders. They didn't say much, didn't need to, because for the first time since Naomi's crash, they weren't running or hiding or burying pain in codes and cables. They were flying together, and below them the world kept spinning, but they finally did not. The landing was smooth, effortless, like Harper's hands remembered more than her mind ever could. The wheels touched down on the airstrip with a quiet sigh, and for a moment the world stood still again. She sat in the cockpit, eyes closed, holding the silence in her chest like breath she didn't want to exhale. Ethan leaned back in the co-pilot seat, head tilted toward the fading sky. "You haven't lost a thing," he said softly. "Not even the wind knows how to fight you." She smiled without opening her eyes. "I didn't fly to feel control. I flew because it was the only place I wasn't chasing anything." "And now?" he asked. She looked at him. "Now I think I might be ready to land for real." They spent the night at a quiet B&B near the coast. No security, no alarms, no encrypted hard drives, just an old fireplace, the smell of sea air, and a worn quilt that didn't care about the past. Harper lay on her side, watching Ethan sleep, wondering how a man who had been so broken could make the world feel so steady. He stirred just before dawn. "Are you watching me?" he murmured. "You snore," she teased, "like a freight train under sand." "Charming," he muttered, rolling onto his back. "What are you thinking?" She hesitated. "I'm thinking we can't live in hiding forever. We told the truth, but we still don't know how it ends." "Then maybe," he said, "we start writing our own ending." Later that morning, Raina called. Her voice was calm, but something in her tone said urgency. "You both need to see this, now." Back at Raina's new workspace, this one hidden beneath a bookstore in the city, she pulled up a video feed. Greaves made a move. He's not just denying anymore, he's threatening countercharges. Claims the data was fabricated using AI, claims the recordings were synthetically enhanced. Harper felt the familiar heat of fury rise again. "He's going to bury the truth in noise." Raina shook her head. "No, he's not, because someone else just stepped up." She hit play. The screen filled with a press conference. And there he was, Silas Holt, hair slicked, voice steady, jaw tight. "I was part of the cover-up," Silas was saying. "I signed the manifests, I saw the payments. Naomi Monroe was silenced because she knew too much, and I can no longer live with the weight of her death on my conscience." Harper. He blinked. Ethan let out a slow breath. "He flipped?" Harper asked. "He's testifying?" Raina nodded. "Live, under oath, right now. Greaves didn't plan for this." Ethan looked stunned. "He's giving up everything." "Then we owe him everything," Harper said. By nightfall, the tide had turned again. Headlines now read, "Whistleblower confirms Black Ops cover-up." News vans parked outside Greaves' estate. The Department of Justice released a statement. There was talk of federal charges, international sanctions. Names were finally being spoken out loud. But Harper didn't feel triumphant. She felt empty. The kind of emptiness that follows justice, not because it wasn't right, but because justice never fills the hole left by loss. She stepped outside into the bookstore's alleyway. The wind curled around her like a memory. Ethan followed quietly. "It's happening," she said. "It's finally happening." "Yeah," he replied. "But you don't look happy." I thought it would bring her back," she admitted. "Or at least bring me closer to who I was before she died." Ethan leaned against the brick beside her. "That version of you died with her. But the one standing here now, she's stronger, braver, and she's not alone." She looked at him and something inside her softened. "I don't want to keep fighting forever," she said. "Then don't," he said. "Let's finish this, and then let's disappear on our terms, not theirs." She took his hand. For the first time, she wasn't gripping it out of fear, but out of choice. 3 months later, the world had changed. Greaves was indicted on multiple charges: fraud, conspiracy, obstruction. He stood in court, flanked by attorneys, no longer untouchable. The headlines were brutal. His fall from grace wasn't quiet. It echoed through every corridor of power. He'd once prowled. Silas Holt, though scarred, stood tall. His testimony triggered a cascade. Other whistleblowers came forward. The spiderweb Naomi had once mapped in her logbook had finally been torn down, strand by strand, by voices she never lived to hear. Harper didn't attend the trial. She didn't need to. Her war had already been fought. She and Ethan had moved to a small coastal town, the kind with more sky than skyline. They opened a rescue flight program for emergency medical evacuations, a dream Naomi once whispered about on long-haul flights when no one else was listening. They called it Monroe Sky. Every mission saved a life. Every flight honored hers. Harper walked into the hangar one afternoon with 2 coffees in hand and found Ethan cleaning the propeller blade of their Cessna. He looked up and smiled. "You always bring coffee when you're about to ruin my day." She handed him the cup. "I got a call." From who? Raina, she's writing a book. Wants us to give her the final chapter. What happened after? Ethan took a sip. What should we tell her? Harper paused. Tell her we stopped running. Tell her we built something out of ashes. And we didn't wait for permission to be happy. Ethan nodded slowly. She won't believe it. She doesn't have to, Harper said. We do. They stood in silence for a moment, just the hum of wind against the hangar door, the distant cry of gulls, the smell of fuel, grass, salt, and sky. I want to marry you, Ethan said. Harper blinked. Is this you proposing? More like confessing, he said. You don't have to answer now. She laughed, shaking her head. You know what's funny? If someone told me a year ago that I'd fall for a fugitive turned hero who lived in a hangar and whispered military secrets in his sleep, I'd have had them institutionalized. Is that a no? He asked. She kissed him instead. That evening, as the sun melted into the sea, Harper took flight again. Ethan rode shotgun. Below them, the town shrank to toy-sized simplicity. Above them, clouds unfolded like pages in a book that hadn't been finished until now. I think Naomi would have liked this, Ethan said over the headset. Harper smiled. She always said the sky tells better stories than we do. They banked left, chasing the last light. No press, no ghosts, no more running, just wind and love and altitude. If you've made it this far, let us know what you thought about the story. Rate it from 1 to 10 in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you're not subscribed yet, don't forget to subscribe to catch all our upcoming stories.